Hello, dear listener, and welcome back to another episode of Havlicek Stole the Pod. I'm your host, Alex Goldberg. With me, as always, is Dr. Justin Quinn and Daniel Donavedian. Today, we're just coming back from the All-Star break. We don't have a guest. We're just going to talk about what's happened over the All-Star break for the C's, and then we're going to go into a deeper dive on the Eastern Conference generally as we kind of round into the next final portion, the last third really of the season, with the Boston Celtics holding down the 2 seed, still in a virtual tie with the New York Knicks. But we're going to evaluate the state of the Eastern Conference as we get closer and closer to the playoffs and we start to think about what that looks like. We're also going to talk about a couple of other things, lottery stuff. That's been the topic du jour. We'll spend a little time on that as well. But before we get into that, let's start with you, Daniel. How's it going?
Pretty good. I'm out in California, getting ready to go to Celtics Lakers on Sunday. And been enjoying the Olympics too. Those are almost over. I think they end Sunday, but yeah, it's been good.
I just watched the women's hockey final between U.S. and Canada.
Yeah,
that was an awesome game. Holy smokes.
That last goal was awesome.
Yeah, crazy to watch. I have a lot of hockey fans in my life, so that was a fun one. JQ, what's going on with you?
Well, summer just fell on us here in Mexico City. We don't really get a spring. It just basically just straight to summer. And I am very tired because my wife is teaching at 7 a.m. as I was whining to y'all earlier.
A little bit of summer would be nice here in Brooklyn, New York, where I reside. And it is a little warmer, but we're going to get hit with a bomb cyclone right on time. So feeling great about that. But it's fine. We're going to keep on trucking and somebody's car alarm is going off. Perfect timing. Let's get this show on the road. Start with the news, as we always do. Since our last pod, the Boston Celtics have not played any games because it's been the All-Star break. But Ron Harper Jr., who might be a Boston Celtic by the end of the year, played in the Rising Stars Challenge versus his brother Dylan Harper of the San Antonio Spurs. Really good game. Dylan Harper got the last laugh with a crucial late game fadeaway bucket over his older brother. Something that notably has never happened when it comes to older brothers facing off against younger brothers in pickup basketball or in any other basketball context. That's never happened. No younger brother has ever successfully scored over an older brother until right now. And I can speak as a verifiable fact. Jaylen Brown also was in town for All-Star Weekend. He played in the game, had a pretty decent showing on, was he Team Stars or Team Stripes? I don't even remember.
I think it was Team Stripes.
He was Stripes, yeah.
Team Stripes had a pretty decent showing, posted some highlights, including, taking some nice corner fadeaway jumpers, doing, kind of classic all-star. Nobody's going super duper hard. We're all just kind of trying to get our shots off. But, all things being equal, I don't know. We can just kind of quickly talk about the All-Star game. But, I mean, the games were more competitive, or at least the first 2 games were more competitive with the kind of mini game Team USA format. It did feel more like a pickup game. What do you think, generally?
I think this weekend was a pretty big success for the NBA. I mean, we all had our qualms about it going into it, and I still think the setup was a little silly given that some people didn't really know what was going on. But I just saw that it had they had 24 million viewers or something. They smashed the record from last year because last year was pretty much a down year, and it was their most viewers for in a while for the All-Star weekend. Granted, I think the Olympics bleed in helps because it's both on NBC, so that's worth remembering. But still, it seemed more competitive from what people were saying. I can't say I watched every second of it. The dunk contest, I don't think was anything good. I mean, like I said before, last episode, these are just dudes no average NBA fan really knows. But the game itself, with Kawhi going off, exciting buzzer beater in one of the games, the games themselves seem to be more competitive, and maybe the viewership showed that. Either way, I think the NBA has happier with what they got out of this.
JQ, anything to add?
Yeah. The only thing I'll add to that is it's unclear how much of a role shortening the All-Star game or games really played. I think it's a good format that at least kind of like helps hold your interest a little bit longer than the longer version. I don't remember who on this podcast was advocating for that recently, but really, really smart.
Yeah.
And that aside, let's just open up the dunk contest to professional dunkers and let them enjoy that, or make it into like a season-long competition for people around the country to get into the dunk contest, and then we watch them, because this version sucks and it needs to die.
Well, reportedly, Vince Carter is on his way to save the dunk contest yet again, this time in an advisory role. I have no idea what that looks like or means, but maybe his recruitment efforts will help to juice it up for next year. My thing on this All-Star game is, I thought it was, as far as All-Star games go, about as successful as you could get, with the caveat of the All-Star game is inherently always kind of silly. What I would push on is, I think the Team USA versus World thing was fine, but if we're going to play pickup length games, why not just make it pickup tournament, NBA pickup tournament? Like literally do that. Do it outside, like play on a court in like Venice Beach. I don't know. That would be really fun and cool.
Yeah.
But
I suggested something like that to a Capitanes player one time, and both he and one of his teammates looked at me like I was out of my mind and said, "Our knees, man, no." So they might not be into that.
Fair enough. You can do it on an NBA court.
I think they're looking into it. I've seen some headlines about that. And I mean, it worked.
If you put a real parquet on the court, then yeah, I think it could work.
I just think it would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just like do a big pickup game. Do 4 big pickup games. Have a tournament. That would be cool.
Please.
Anyway. Well, that's enough All-Star talk. It came and went, and now we can get back to the real basketball being played. The Boston Celtics are gearing up for the stretch run by using the first 2 of their 10-day contracts for what will presumably be 3, maybe 4 10-day contracts before they wrap up the season as laid out.
Just these 2.
Just these 2? Well, no, there's one. Oh, but no, you're right.
Because they can go another 14
for
days,
now,
yeah.
Something like that. So what we know is that Delano Banton is back on the Celtics for a 10-day after his very brief stint with the Celtics. Was it last year or the year before? I think it was the year before.
Title year.
Yeah. 23. 24.
Right. And of course, we'll remember Delano Banton for having an insanely monster stat line the last time that he was on the Celtics, and then playing pretty well for the Portland Trailblazers for a hot minute there. So he's back along with John Tonje, which we expected after the salary dump of Chris Boucher to the Utah Jazz and the acquisition of Tonje. That was what that second round pick was for. So both of these guys are on 10-day deals. And as far as we know, they're probably not going to be on the team for much longer than those 10-day deals, barring one of them like having a true monster breakout performance within that period of time. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so they will be signed to 10-day deals, and then after that, that's when things get interesting. As laid out in our last pod with Yossi Goslin, that's when we start to, after that period expires, get into the portion of the season where the Celtics are going to be signing vet minimum guys and converting rookies who are on 2-way contracts. That's where things get a little spicy. So what do we think about what this says for that period going forward?
The one thing I can say for sure is something we touched on in that podcast with Yossi, namely just that they're more likely to hang on to Shilga as a person they want to keep around, which it sounds weird that not elevating him to become a regular NBA player would be the sign that they value him. But they did draft him, and if they brought him up, like they can still bring Tonje back, but they'd have to wait to the end of the season, I think, if I'm right about that. And if they think that Shulga is really going to be a longer-term fit for this team, he still needs a lot of work. Just being completely honest, I'm one of his biggest, as regular listeners know, boosters out there. But he needs more time at the G League level really to be an NBA player. So if they were bringing him back now, that would be a sign they don't believe in him, in my opinion.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Daniel?
I don't have too much to add on them. I will say, if you're confused about all the roster shenanigans going on, keep up with Yossi because he's been predicting this stuff from the jump, and him
Yeah.
and Keith Smith too. Like they just have really good info on this and the exact day when things might happen and the deadlines and stuff. So if you're confused about any of this, which I am sometimes because all the different 10-day rules and the contract specifications are a little confusing. Definitely keep up with them. I will say about Banton, I saw one of like those nonsense games he got subbed in for. It was like in garbage time, and he played well. He hasn't played much this season, but I see no harm in bringing him back. I don't know if really have much of a role, but I'm not against it. And as for Tanjay, I don't really have anything to add to that, but just seems like for now they're saving, which is smart.
Yeah, of course. So this does mean that in all likelihood, Max Shulga will be converted from a two-way contract to a standard contract after this period is over. Just to recap that, and then they will sign presumably an existing vet minimum free agent at the same time as they convert Shulga, and then they will sign. Presumably, we think it's now like 90% certain that they're going to sign Ron Harper on the last day of the season with their remaining vet minimum, just based on the way that things have played out. But like Daniel said, if you do want to know more about that, follow Yossi on Twitter, Blue Sky, on his Third Apron Substack, all of it, and listen to the pods that we have him on. Also, just want to, while we're doing plugs, give a quick shout out. Guys, I don't know about you, but Celtics Beat has been killing it lately. I mean, we've seen a lot of really good stories from some of our colleagues there. Noah Dalzell, obviously, rock
Celtics blog.
solid.
But Celtics Beat's pretty awesome too.
Yep, it's true. Celtics blog has been, yes. That I meant Celtics Beat more in the Celtics Beat reporting world.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
we also have a podcast named that, which causes confusion.
All this is to say, Noah's doing great work. Jack Simone had an awesome piece about Joe Mazzulla's crazy film sessions and how valuable they are for this specific iteration of the Celtics. The podcasts have been going left and right from all sorts of different folks in the Celtics media orbit. It's a great time to follow some of particularly like the kind of up and coming Celtics writers, podcasters, bloggers, media folks, whatever. Danger Card is always posting good stuff as well about cap breakdowns, pick breakdowns, etc. Follow all of those people. If you follow us, you probably already do, but check out a lot of their work anyway, as well as the work of the fine people on this podcast. All right, so we'll close out the news with two pieces, one kind of national level and one more so local Boston Celtics level. But we'll start with the national. So tanking discourse has been all over the NBA for the last, God, I don't know, basically since the Jazz Heat game, right? It's just been nonstop, like constant tanking discourse. We've thrown around solutions on this pod and a bunch of other places. I thought I had a really good one the other day, which is that I'll just briefly lay it out. Every team that doesn't make the playoffs has to select one player to enter into a one-on-one tournament, 21 for every game, ones and twos only, and the winner of the tournament gets the number one pick. I think this would be really cool. It would create a like wandering assassin class of NBA players that would only be employed for this specific reason. It would give DeMar DeRozan like 10 more years on his career, which I think would be awesome. That's the obvious tanking fix. Adam Silver has not reached out to me yet about it, but in general, he does seem to be taking tanking seriously. At least he says. There's more juice on that, so to speak. He's vowing that there's going to be rule changes. JQ, you got something to say here.
Yeah, so recently I just saw an interesting exchange between Danger Cart and the Shadow of Shams Charania, because Shams is not on there. And basically the proposals being discussed Danger Cart seems to be thinking, and I kind of agree that they could make problems actually worse in terms of tanking. And there doesn't seem to be much engagement with many of the more interesting and really novel stuff that's been coming out around the league
Like my
from people
proposal.
following it, like your proposal, like our good buddy Evans. But more specifically, also like Mark Stein had you have to have so many wins in a season before you are even eligible for a top 4 pick. I have no idea like how well any of those would do in terms of like adjusting how much teams tank. But the best one came to me through Yossi actually posting this thing called Cola, which for the uninitiated, I'm going to try to break it down as simply as possible. Basically, the way that it works is it rewards teams that have been out of the playoffs the longest with lottery odds, and makes it the hardest to get good lottery odds for teams that have gone the furthest recently in the postseason. That's a terrible breakdown. It's almost as bad as the writing of the academic paper behind it, which, as a former academic, it's pretty bad. But the idea itself, I think, is pretty brilliant. No, I know.
Shocking.
But the idea itself is the most realistic and most institutable, I guess you could say, way to break the incentive between being bad and rewarding teams that need help.
I can't possibly believe that an academic paper littered with jargon about an obscure niche topic that only a handful of people on Earth would care about is bad.
I am like the circle to the Venn diagram, and I couldn't even deal with it.
Oh, man. Yeah, so Cola is gaining some popularity, both with Bill Simmons in terms of Pepsi and Coke, and also with proposals for the NBA. That was awesome. Sorry, I just have to. Bill is the greatest podcaster of all time because he can read a back-to-back Pepsi and Coke ad. There's just no that's absolute perfection. Peak take maxing. Anyway. Yeah, Daniel, any additional thoughts about the proposals or about Adam Silver's firm language regarding the tanking fixes that are supposedly to come?
Not too much. I mean, I did look at like the master list that Sham sent of the potential things the competition committee might do, and they did have teams can't get a top 4 pick the year after making the conference finals. So kind of related to what you guys were talking about. It is tough how like that would directly like attack the Pacers right now, kind of. And who knows?
For any rebuilding team that has a major player leave the organization.
Yeah. Like if you ever had a major star depart in free agency, which does happen in the NBA, as we know, that could be pretty devastating. I'm not sure when this would even be instituted and what's actually going to get picked, but I also saw like the lottery odds are based on 2-year records, which seems like it might incentivize teams to tank longer. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what actually gets picked from this big list, and if anything does actually get enforced. I mean, they've been talking about it a lot, but I just think it's funny that there's this much tanking talk this year, where I feel like there's been other years somewhat recently where it's been way worse. But for some reason, this year is just really honing in on it. And I know some people have been like, "Oh, there's like gambling ties to that." Like they're mad that tanking teams are messing up the Vegas preseason win totals or whatever. I don't know how true that is, but it is funny how it is funny how it's all taking place like right now. It shows when we're bored and there's no basketball going on, the real whirlwind can go on online.
And that is the best point to come out of tanking discourse, I think. And I was ranting about this earlier, but I'm actually radically reversing. I'm now in favor of a 365-day NBA season so that we can avoid the boredom and lull of discourse that inevitably takes hold during things like the All-Star break. So my fix for the All-Star game is to eliminate the All-Star game and to simply have a real basketball game being played every single day of the calendar year. The draft and free agency will take place on the morning of September 1st, and then we'll just keep it moving. I'm tired of this, guys. So let's move on.
Into it from a job security standpoint.
Yeah, I'm sure the players would love that.
Not so much.
Yeah, probably not. Even so, let's keep this moving. We'll also just briefly touch on the noise continues to grow around Jason Tatum's potential return in early March, and the NBC documentary is pouring more and more gas on that fire. Yes, that's right. Brett Hampton is making a documentary through NBC following Jason Tatum's rehab process, setting off a lot of alarm bells about possible returns, and leave it at that, despite other folks, including Jason Tatum, trying to tamp down on that. Anyway, let's keep it moving. No steal today because we have no guest to steal the pod. So we're just going to roll right into part 2. We're going to get into a closer look on the Eastern Conference. Who are the contenders? Who are the pretenders? Let's sort this thing into tiers. Let's explain why we're doing that. And then let's really I think I'd love to focus on basically what I think we agree are the 4 or 5 teams that have a really legitimate shot at winning the title. Or at winning the East at the very least. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So quickly, let's recap. Just we've done it a couple of times, but some trade deadline moves that affect this picture. The Atlanta Hawks added Jonathan Kuminga and Buddy Hield. They sent out Kristaps Porzingis, who maybe will be playing against the Celtics tonight in Golden State. As well as Gabe Vincent and Luke Kennard and Jock Landale. And so they got Lonzo Ball from Cleveland. Unclear if Lonzo is actually going to play for them, but he is, I believe, on the team as it stands right now.
For now, he's probably going to get cut, but you never know.
We'll see. The Brooklyn Nets added Josh Minott, and if he needs somebody who's done the Boston to Brooklyn move to show him around, Josh, I don't know if you'll ever listen to this podcast, but I'm happy to take you on a tour. The Boston Celtics, of course, notably added Nikola Vucevic and sent off Anthony Simons. They also sent out said Josh Minott and Chris Boucher, who we mentioned earlier, as well as Xavier Tillman for players who will be signed later. The Charlotte Hornets added Kobe White. They sent out Colin Sexton and Xavier Tillman for cash.
They picked up Tillman.
They picked up Tillman.
So for cash. Yeah.
Right. And they also picked up, they picked up Tyus Jones, right? Who was tossed out.
Some of these names might pop up more than once because then another team will move
correct. That's a lot to unpack. But the big ad is Kobe White, who is not healthy, but might be healthy soon. The Chicago Bulls, speaking of, added Rob Dillingham. They sent out Ayo Dosunmu, and they also got Nick Richards for Ousmane Dieng. They also traded Kobe White. They were in the Sexton Kobe White trade, and they traded they traded for Gershon Yabusele, sending out Dalen Terry to the New York Knicks. The Cleveland Cavaliers made probably the biggest move of the Eastern Conference playoffs acquisitions. They added James Harden. They sent out Darius Garland. They also added Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder for DeAndre Hunter. Clearly the most aggressive Eastern Conference team at the trade deadline. The Detroit Pistons added Kevin Huerter for Jaden Ivey and salary filler. The Indiana Pacers added Ivica Zubac for Benedict Mathurin, Isaiah Jackson, and some other salary filler. Zubac, we'll see if he's actually going to play a whole lot this year. Again, seems a little unlikely given where Indiana's in the standings, but you never know. The New York Knicks made what I thought was a pretty impactful move in Jose Alvarado for Dalen Terry, who they acquired from the Gershon Yabusele trade. And finally, the Washington Wizards added some pieces for next year because Anthony Davis is not playing this year. Of course, they also added Trae Young earlier, but the big headline is Anthony Davis, as well as D'Angelo Russell and Dante Exum for Chris Middleton, Tyus Jones, an additional salary filler. Those are the big trade deadline acquisitions for the East. Let's get into the teams who will not be contending. I think we mostly agree here. It's going to be the Indiana Pacers and the Washington Wizards have very little incentive to win games at this time. Is that fair?
Sure.
Yeah, the Wizards shut everybody down.
The Wizards are done. They're shutting everybody down. I had the privilege of having to get my phone reset the other day, which meant I had to spend some time in the Barclays Center, which meant I got the glorious chance to watch the worst basketball game I've ever seen in my life the Washington Wizards playing the Brooklyn Nets. Both of these teams are openly tanking, and the Wizards were
They
tanking.
made you go to that while you were getting your phone fixed?
Yeah,
that's terrible.
This is
so
actually
rude.
it's actually so it's factored into the cost of getting your phone fixed at the Barclays Center. You get to pay a little bit less, but you have to attend a Brooklyn Nets game, which is really unfortunate. Yeah, no, that the Wizards pulled off. I don't even know how I can describe the level of tank that the Wizards committed to in this game. I mean, it was genuinely shocking to watch this go.
Which is why they
Like,
were fined so heavily by the NBA.
Right, exactly. I mean, the Nets were not playing well, and they were like up by 40 at one point. I'm just like, what are we anyway? The Indiana Pacers also will not be winning a lot of games. They are fully in the tank, and they need to be with the pick protections they put on for that first round pick in the Zubac trade. Anything to add with either of these teams?
Yeah, I think having its own category for the Nets is fair because Jordi Fernandez does not seem like a tanking coach. I think he's a guy that will get them on the right path. I mean, we saw it when they beat the Celtics in Boston. So I don't think they're quite in the Wizards Pacers territory. But like Alex said, they're still not good.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is interesting to see a team that very much has an incentive to be like one of the four worst teams. Not fully shut it down, but they're bad enough that like they kind of don't need to just play the young guys. May as well. Anyway, let's get into the next tier because the next tier features some teams that could kind of vaguely be in this playoff mix or at least the play-in mix, but have had some pretty disappointing seasons up to this point. We'll just run through them. We have the Orlando Magic, Miami Heat, Chicago Bulls, and Milwaukee Bucks sitting in the treadmill of mediocrity. So let's start with, I think we got to start with Milwaukee, because to me they feel like them and Chicago feel like the least likely of these teams to make a genuine run at the play-in at this point. I would be shocked if Giannis Antetokounmpo plays another game this season. Just feels like it doesn't make a lot of sense given the injuries that he's had, the record, the relative discontent, generally horrible vibes of the Bucks. Correct me if I'm wrong, fellas, but do you really think we're going to see Giannis again this year?
I could see him not
What's the
coming
point?
back. Yeah, I mean, I think the Bucks could arguably get put in that tanking category now. That was obviously not their intention coming in, but it's just been such a failure. The Bulls, I'll give them like a little bit of credit for finally picking a direction. Granted, it's
Have they though? I mean,
I think
really?
they're finally committing to being bad. I think they're finally committing to stinking.
What were they doing before?
Just being completely mediocre. And they were being bad, don't get me wrong, but they were being like
I
little
don't
Clinging to life.
really. They just shuffled some different versions of the same players, so that way they can say they did something and haven't really done anything, in my opinion. But they did things, I guess.
I think they're just getting ready to be super bad. And well, they'll keep Josh Giddey around and Buzelis too. But I think before they're somewhat flirting with the idea of, oh, maybe we'll be like a Heat team and make a sneaky run. But like everybody knew that wasn't going to happen. Now for this latter half of the season, I don't think there's going to be any kind of attempt. They're just going to be terrible.
I'm really excited to see Matas Buzelis get like 30 shots a game. I think that will actually be potentially pretty fun, but we'll see. Probably going to be the only fun thing that's happening in Chicago sports for the next little bit. Indiana Bears? Sure. Anyway, we'll keep it moving. So there's two other teams, the Florida teams, the Orlando Magic and the Miami Heat in this tier. And both of these teams, I think, do not really have a ton of incentive to tank outright. They're not as bad as Washington or Indiana. They're not going to get a top 5 pick. But to say that they haven't had disappointing seasons would be a pretty significant understatement. I want to start with Orlando here because between the injuries to Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs, the pretty severe Paolo Banchero regression, or at least inconsistency, questions about Jamal Mosley's offense, this has Desmond Bain kind of not being the player that they necessarily were hoping he would be after burning 4 firsts for him. This has been a disaster season for the Magic, at least so far. Is there any hope of salvaging this and getting to the play-in or maybe the playoffs?
I mean, I think with how not great or like somewhat mediocre those middle teams are in the East, they could at least compete a little, but I don't really see them making it past the second round. Even the first round's a little debatable. And I think if they are a first round exit, people are getting fired. But it was like you said, Alex, we were talking earlier this season, before the season even started, about them maybe being like a potential sneaky dark horse contender. And that has just not happened. I think they showed like bright spots when they played the Celtics last season in the playoffs. Like Paulo was great, and Franz Wagner had his moments too. But whatever traction they had then has just been lost. It's injuries that's a factor too, but I don't think you can blame it all on that, which is a little concerning. But yeah, like you said, it's just been pretty much a disaster.
I think they control their pick this season. I think they're, if I remember right, the Wizards have swap rights, which doesn't, as bad as their season has been, look like something that they have to worry about. So if I were them, I would just rest their players a lot, which they do seem to be doing with Franz. They just put him back on the injury report, even though he played fairly, I think fairly recently. Maybe I'm imagining that, but he played. He came back. I'm pretty sure more than once since the Berlin game. So it does seem like they're doing that, but I mean, honestly, I think they probably have more to gain from a decent lottery pick than they would from any kind of postseason run.
I can see both arguments. I think it's got to be really disappointing to see a team with this much young potential talent really just flame out. And I could also see there being a case for we got to play this thing out because we need Paolo to get himself right. Paolo is healthy as far as we know. Like maybe we just need to see this thing play out so that he can reestablish some rhythm and momentum heading into next year. I don't think it's give up time on Paolo, but this season has definitely been concerning. So I could see the argument there, but yeah, to your point, if it's 2-3 weeks down the line and nothing is changing, you might start to see Orlando trend the other way. Miami is in the same place that they have been for the last couple of years, it feels like. They're holding firm at the 8th seed. They got Norm Powell doing Norm Powell stuff. They got Bam doing Bam stuff. Eric Spoelstra's doing his thing. They got, some intriguing young players with potential upside that haven't necessarily hit that upside. They didn't do anything of substance at the trade deadline. It's just kind of the same old season for the Heat here. Is there anything that we should expect differently?
I mean, I don't think we really should necessarily. I just remember they had the anniversary night for the 2006 championship, like right before the deadline. And then
Mm,
after the deadline, they proceeded to literally make no moves. And I think that was kind of telling. It's like these guys are celebrating the past and living in it still. They still got Pat Riley run the show. Spo's a good
mm.
coach, don't get me wrong, but like they did nothing. They made no attempt at getting better. And if you're a Miami fan, I feel like you got to be pretty mad, especially watching them choke against the Celtics like multiple times this regular season.
It's pretty clear they have their eyes set on landing Giannis or someone else, maybe
Mm.
Durant, seeing the fun that's going on with Houston lately.
Mm.
But they're clearly looking to the future as well, though not necessarily with, at least from where we sit, I think a coherent plan. Just a hey, we have less taxes and it's nice here kind of
Yeah.
approach.
And to be fair, that approach has worked out fairly well for them in the past. But the past is the past, as you said before, Daniel. And the Miami Heat are not necessarily focused on their current present moment. I think their Spoelstra is good enough, and they have enough talent on the roster that they're probably going to make the playoffs. They're probably going to play either Detroit, Boston, or New York in round one, and it's probably going to go the way that it's gone the past few years. But we will see. Hello, thank you so much, ambulance siren. Love that. Um, anyway, I am gonna call an audible here and say that I think there is a team in the next category that actually belongs in this category. I know the Atlanta Hawks got Jonathan Kaminga at the deadline. I know that they added Buddy Hield. I know that they're like shuffling some stuff around. I do not necessarily think the Atlanta Hawks are like going into this home stretch with the expectations of we're going to make the playoffs and, mess around at that. To me, it feels like this roster is very unbalanced and like in a kind of strange place where they basically have a Kongwu and no other bigs. And without Trae Young, I guess Mohamed Gay, is that how you pronounce the name? Yeah, he's
Gay, I
yeah,
think.
he's playing well, but they also they don't really have much by way of shot creation either. To me, this roster just makes absolutely no sense from a fit standpoint. I can see it from a hey, we've got some guys and maybe some of them will pop standpoint, but from a fit standpoint, I really don't see it. And I fell for it again in the offseason. I know I always fall for it with the Hawks, but I don't see a path for this team to be relevant in the back half of the season. Is there anything to prove me wrong here?
So it depends on what you mean. So I group these teams together because they all are moving in the right direction, but in varying degrees. Some of them much less so, as we're gonna probably talk about.
Yeah.
But all of them are at least making some very clear movements in the right direction. And I probably shouldn't have, but I did think about the fact that Atlanta also moved off of Trae Young, which I think is it wasn't a deadline move exactly, but I think it was maybe the biggest sign that they recognize what the new era is and they're making moves, confusing at the moment ones, but still moves towards a better future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I largely agree with you, Alex, and I don't have too much to add. But I just think it's hilarious how no matter who's on this team, what the roster looks like, how are they mediocre mid every single year? Their record, it's what are they, 26-30? I think I just saw. They just hover around that area permanently, it seems like, for the last decade. It's got to be kind of tough to be a Hawks fan. They have such a good market and their fans are just waiting for a really good team. And yeah, they made the conference finals a few years ago, but I think all NBA fans know that was kind of a fluke.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just tough because Jalen Johnson, I think, is a promising player. He has a lot of potential, all-star. I think there's a real shot that he could be a valuable player someday, but he's still very young and it's kind of hard to know what his ceiling is. And, the way that he plays as this kind of versatile combo forward is incredibly useful in a playoff context. But I just we've never seen Jalen Johnson as the lead creator on his team. And maybe we'll see a little bit of that now. But to me, it feels like this is a team that is a transaction cycle or two away from being, what we think it could be. There is still some good players. Dyson Daniels is a good player. I think Mohamed Gay is a good player. Onyeka Okongwu has some real talent. There's good players on this team. But the roster just doesn't make sense. And until it starts to make sense, it's going to be hard to see them being anything more than a play-in also ran. Let's get to some of the teams that are pretty clearly trending up, or at least having seasons where they're playing with house money. These are not contenders, but these teams we think are all going to make the playoffs and are having some good seasons in context. The Toronto Raptors, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Charlotte Hornets. Which one do we want to talk about first? I'll leave it to y'all.
Hornets.
Let's do it. All right, let's rip the Band-Aid off. So the Hornets are surging right now. They have been playing really great basketball for about a month. Con Knippel is in a brutal death race with Cooper Flag for Rookie of the Year. It's going to come down to the wire. He deserves it. They're both playing great. Brandon Miller is having a nice season. Let's see. A number of players on their roster are starting to develop and, come forward and pop. Obviously, the Kobe White acquisition could also be very interesting for them as well. If LaMelo Ball can get some of his movement tendencies under control, this could be a really good team, or at least it is a really good team. Charles Lee seems like his influence is really starting to.
Are you talking about the on or off court movement of?
Yeah, I'm just going to leave it. I'm just going to leave it at LaMelo Ball. I think is a very talented NBA player. I think that he is a fan favorite. I understand why. Flashy, stylish game, cool to watch, generally an enjoyable presence. All I would say is, LaMelo, you are now a multimillionaire. It is okay if you do not drive your own car. I'll just throw that out there. And all this is to say, um, barring off the court incidents or health luck, it sure seems like Charlotte is going to be playoff bound. So with that in mind, also they had just has to be said, really fun, feisty thing going on with the Pistons. But yeah, so thinking about this team and kind of where it was and where it is heading and where it's been trending, um, how far can the Hornets go, I guess is my question.
In the current iteration or just like in the future?
Let's just keep it in the current iteration.
Currently, I'm not sure, but I do think they should make the playoffs. I mean, it's crazy.
I think they could win a round depending on the matchup, but I think that's probably their ceiling.
Yeah, it's crazy to see how they're literally 2.5 games behind the Heat, 3 games behind the Magic. Given the other team's expectations versus them, that's pretty crazy. I mean, I think some of us thought preseason that they would be better, given like a lot of the young talent they had. But I think this has been a kind of an early return on investment. And I think next year is looking pretty hopeful too, given that the East is still somewhat so-so.
The Charles Lee bombs away strategy seems really fun if you're a young team with shooting. I'll say that. That seems like a great, fun, enjoyable way to play. And they're having fun playing basketball. So I think, to me, they're playing really well. I have a really hard time seeing them like outright win a round against, one of the top 4 seeds in the East. Like maybe you could talk to Cleveland. We'll get to them, but I think it would require a lot of the Hornets to like get to the point where they could like get a 5 seed and upset a 4 seed. But they're certainly trending in the right direction. And I think they could definitely give a team a scare just with the night to night variance. So we'll keep tabs on them. The other 2 teams that we should talk about before we get into the teams that we think are actual contender-ish zone. So for that, the Toronto Raptors have had what I think and really the Sixers both have had a house money season to some degree. The Raptors came in with pretty low expectations, but Scotty Barnes has been a very worthy all-star. He's been playing great. Brandon Ingram has also been an all-star. Whether he is worthy of that designation, who knows? But he did make the team. Some of their young players are starting to pop. Grady Dick is having a nice season. They're generally trending up. We got to give a shout out to Mamu as well, who's having a really nice season with Toronto. Jakob Poeltl is still there. He's making money.
What's their new center? I cannot remember the new center's name. He's doing great too.
All right. Well, I believe you.
Colin Turner something.
Yeah. Oh, Colin Murray Bowles. Yeah, no, he's good.
Colin Murray Boyles, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he was giving the Celtics some fits the last time they played. The Raptors are playing well. They're trending up. The Sixers, I mean, listen, everything is house money with the Sixers as long as Joel Embiid is healthy. And for the most part, he has been. Tyrese Maxey has had an outstanding season. Will probably make All-NBA. While VJ Edgecombe is probably no longer going to win Rookie of the Year, certainly feels like it's likely he will make an all-rookie team. He's been great. Paul George was playing reasonably well until he got suspended for 25 games for stuff. And in general, the Sixers have had, I think, a pretty nice year. It's pretty clear that if Embiid and others stay healthy, they're going to make the playoffs. So same question for both of these teams. How far can these teams go?
Ooh.
The Raptors,
Toronto?
I would say in this group of teams we have here, I think they have the biggest argument for maybe being in the next tier above. I think they've been pretty good, and I think they could luck out with like a round 1 draw. I think they should at least make the second round. Predicting Philly is really difficult. I mean, we all know that. I don't know what they're going to do. Who knows what's going to happen when Paul George comes back. I do think they'll make the playoffs at least, obviously. But I just really don't know what to predict from them since Embiid is such a variable. But I think they could make the second round as well, at least because if Embiid's healthy, that's obviously a huge boon. But Maxey, no matter what, has been a constant for them, and I think
Edge
the
guy
guys
too.
around them are better. Yeah, although
Mm,
trading McCain, I know we've talked about that a
yeah.
little. I don't really get that, but that doesn't really relate to the playoffs at the moment.
Don't have too much to add to that other than I think that Philly is the most confounding team, like depending on the health of both Paul George and Embiid, as well as like how well they gel when George returns. They could be anywhere from completely missing the playoffs to winning the East. I don't think either of those two like farthest outcomes are very likely. Probably somewhere in the middle, probably at least making the playoffs and at least winning some games, but it's really hard to tell.
I will say the Celtics have struggled against the Sixers this year. Now, maybe Jason Tatum will change that for sure. He has consistently owned the Sixers in the playoffs, but we don't know what Jason Tatum we're getting. And all this is to say, I'm not sure I would be thrilled if I was a Celtics fan and we got the Sixers in round one, but that's
No,
something to
you don't
keep in
want
mind for
Embiid.
later. No, just doesn't seem super fun. But Embiid also recently quoted as saying he would give back his MVP for one healthy playoff run. So it would be interesting to see. I'm keeping tabs on Philly. Let's get into the teams that I think we all agree, if they're healthy and if they're in a decent position, these teams should all be contenders to win the Eastern Conference outright. We've broken it into three
If
tiers,
healthy.
if healthy. We've broken it into three tiers. First off, the Cleveland Cavaliers making a flurry of trade deadline moves, now holding steady at the 4 seed despite a rough start to the season. They added James Harden. They've got a talented front court in Mobley and Allen. They've got depth. They've got a great coach. They've got a certified playoff killer in Donovan Mitchell. I turn it to you, gentlemen, both. Why can't this team win the Eastern Conference?
I mean, I believed in them preseason, but now they obviously have a pretty different team. I still think it's feasible for them. I do wonder what the Harden Mitchell combo will look like in the playoffs. And as we've documented, Justin's talked about it too. James Harden in the playoffs, still a bit of a question mark, and he's only gotten older. But to be fair to him, he's still producing in the regular season. I think they should definitely get a pretty good seed, and especially from where they were, like they were in a tailspin earlier, like a few months ago, and they've really corrected their course. I just think it's kind of funny how over like the last 5 or 6 years, these contenders in the East really haven't changed that much. I would say throw in a few years with the Bucks and Pacers, but the Knicks, the Celtics, the Sixers, kind
Cavs.
of the Cavs, they've all been around the top. Like it's just funny how things really haven't shifted that much.
Yeah, not too much to add to that. I mean, Cleveland has some other players that need to be healthy and fully integrated as well. They probably will be. I'm still like I can see the vision everyone is, but I've been burned by it by James Harden in the postseason too many times to take it seriously until I see the success in at least one round.
I'm going to make the case for why the Cavs are better than people expect and why I think they are a genuinely serious finals threat. If we look at who the last few finals have seen, there's one team that's in the finals that's always pretty established, heavy favorite, one seed, been there all along, no debate, obviously earned it, right? The Thunder last year, the Celtics the year before that, Denver, all of these like the even the Warriors, like teams that you could see a credible path basically for the entire season for all of those teams. And then there is a kind of wild card team that usually shows up as their opponent. If we look at the last four finals, it's been the wild card team has been the Pacers last year, the Dallas Mavericks the year before, the Miami Heat ultimate wild card team, and then I would put the 2022 Celtics as a wild card team, considering they were a below 500 team for a good chunk of that year. To me, this Cleveland Cavaliers team feels a lot like that wild card team that could make the finals, where disappointing season, high expectations, lot of tumult, lot of turmoil, and then they go all in at the trade deadline, make a flurry of moves to reset the culture. They've got, position themselves reasonably well enough to be in the mix, and they're infusing talent for a late run. That's pretty much the recipe that Dallas used to get to the finals 2 years ago against Boston. And it is a recipe that is not without precedent. Basically, taking a team that feels like it's not quite where it should be and juicing it up with a big trade deadline acquisition or two and banking on a relatively parity filled conference to sort that out. They're the wild card team for me, and I can of course be corrected. Donovan Mitchell and James Harden have had their share of playoff failures. I grant you both that, but this team is also very experienced. It's very well coached, and I think if things break the right way, and if Cleveland's playing well heading into say April or May, I think this is potential to be a really dangerous team that people are not quite prepared for. But we'll see. It's going to be an interesting watch. The other, yeah, go ahead, JQ. You seem like you have something to say.
I was just gonna say, all of those teams you pointed out as a wild card did not ultimately win the title, which I think is probably fair for this case as well. I think whatever comes out of the West is going to be too much for them to deal with, particularly if they do manage to get that far in the postseason. But you do make a pretty compelling case that they can get that far to begin with.
There's always that wild card team. I don't know. The playoffs are always a little wonky like that, where the favorites don't favorite as hard as they used to. Meanwhile, another team that we have in this zone, the kind of almost contenders. So we have the Boston Celtics here, who profile as a contender in many respects. They're number 2 offense in the NBA, creeping towards being a top 10 defense as well. And, they've been playing pretty well. They're 35-19. Jaylen Brown, lock all NBA candidate, deep bench, pretty decent trade deadline acquisition, at least we think. And they've got an all NBA player potentially coming back. So why is this team fringe contender as opposed to just actual contender? JQ, yeah, start us off.
Yeah. So in the Cavs case, I think, we need to see what they put together actually work, particularly in light of what's happened before. With Boston, we know it can work if, and this is the big if, Jason Tatum is the player we think he can be. There's a pretty good chance that he might not be. There's even a chance he might not return. I think we all agree that that's pretty unlikely at this point, barring, knock on particle board, something happening in this rehab process. But at least for now, and this is a very lightly placed asterisk, we still need to see a little more to know for sure.
Daniel?
Yeah, I would agree that, Tatum's just the ultimate variable. We've talked about it all year long. And of course, they've been the biggest surprise, I'd say, in the entire East. We kind of saw, the Magic not being that great. I guess we didn't really see that coming. But the Celtics being this good has really just shocked everybody. And we've seen them struggle against the East elite at times without Tatum. That first Pistons game, whatever, that was the beginning of the season. But then they lost to him in Detroit. And then they just got smacked, honestly, by the Knicks at home. Take those losses into account. Without Tatum, it's going to be tough. Now, obviously, throw Tatum into the mix. If he's perfectly healthy, then I think this is a true contender. But like Justin was saying, we still don't really know what's going to happen with that, what's it going to look like. But hey, they got Joe Mazzulla at the helm, and that's looked great so far this season. So I think they have that on their side. They have some experience, obviously. Derek White, JV Pritchard, they've all been here before, all know what the playoffs are like, so I think that helps. Yeah, so obviously Tatum is the ultimate variable for this team, and we've seen them struggle against the top of the top elite, the East, without him. So if he's not in the equation, I don't think I can put them as a true contender, but they have the experience. They got Joe Mazzulla at the helm, and he's been awesome this year. And if Tatum can look even 70% of himself or something like that, I think you can bump this team up to a true contender. But it's going to come down to either the Knicks and Pistons, I think. Those, if they somehow collide, whether it's in the second round, conference finals, something like that, I think one of those series is just going to define the East.
I will throw out that I think this team is a bona fide contender, kind of regardless of the Jason Tatum fit. Just feels like all the advanced metrics and everything that we've seen from them suggests that they can rise to that level. I think matchups dictate everything in the playoffs, and
That's
I
fair.
think there's a world in which this team gets, the matchups that work well for it. I think getting home court for at least 2 rounds will matter a lot for this team. It feels like there is a substantive difference whether they're the 2 seed or the 3 seed, both in terms of who they play in round one and having home court in round two. I think at this point it's fair to say that the Celtics will not be getting the 1 seed, but I think if they can hold on to that 2 seed and just fight that thing off, fight the Knicks off a little bit there, I feel like there's a real path for this team, regardless of how healthy Jason Tatum is, to just straight up win the Eastern Conference. The Pistons, we'll talk about in a minute. Boston's played them pretty well this year, but I think there's a world in which they can win this thing. That being said, as you mentioned before, Daniel, there's 2 pretty clear, obvious contenders here. Despite what I think has been a kind of uneven season for the New York Knicks, with the acquisition of Alvarado, rounding into form, this team has these weird hiccups in the regular season. We've seen it before. And then the playoffs start, and suddenly Jalen Brunson is cooking. The Mitchell Robinson is gobbling up every offensive rebound. OG and Josh Hart are getting in everybody's faces, and the Knicks are right back in it. To me, it feels like they have to be one of these contender teams. Is that right? Do I have that right?
So I split the last 2 teams, this being one of them, into 2 tiers only because of the fact that one of them looks like a complete cut above the other. This team, if it gets to the level you were just describing, and they've shown us that they can do it in the past, then I agree. But until we see it, once again, not quite at that level, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say the Knicks are a true contender for the most part. I mean, it feels like one of those teams where they've been knocking at the door in previous years. Their fans are obviously begging for any kind of sustained success because they haven't been to the finals in decades. And Brunson, I mean, that guy's a true captain. Shout out Villanova. He's played in huge games before and delivered. And they got scrappy guys like Josh Hart. Mitchell Robinson is just a huge problem for any team, really. Definitely would be an issue for the Celtics. And I feel like the Celtics-Knicks series would be really tough for Boston. Tatum, whatever his health is aside. Because I feel like you kind of alluded to this earlier, Alex. The Celtics have played the Pistons a bit better, and they haven't looked as convincing. Against the rest of the NBA, though, I think the Pistons have been better. But yeah, I would be pretty surprised if the Knicks got out before round two. If they didn't make the conference finals, I'd be pretty surprised.
That would be a significant upset, but I mean, Celtics Knicks, if that's the round two matchup, I think that's going to be a tough matchup for both teams. I think the Knicks, to their credit, they dominated the Celtics the last time that they played. Now, obviously, this is right before All-Star break, acquiring new players, trying to integrate them, but Joe Mazzulla has not been able to solve Mitchell Robinson. That's one player that just has consistently gotten under Boston's skin. Jalen Brunson, I think, had a good game and has generally had many good games against Boston. But to me, this matchup comes down to the front court more than anything. They have to find an answer for the Knicks on the glass. And if they don't, I mean, listen, the Knicks could dominate basically anybody on the glass. That's just kind of their thing. If they can get back to the level of physicality that we've seen from the Knicks defense in the past, they could be a real threat. Their offense has been much better this year, but the defensive slippage is notable. And again, it all comes down to matchups, right? A big part of why the Pacers were able to beat the Knicks last year is because they punished Brunson and Cat relentlessly. They were absolutely hammering that specific pick and roll defense. And the Knicks have really not necessarily solved for that in a meaningful sense. That's still a matchup that you can exploit. The difference this year is that it's unclear to me if there are teams in the East that can exploit that matchup as effectively as the Pacers did last year. The Pacers' offense was perfectly designed to run circles around that unit. If the Knicks play the Celtics or the Pistons, I don't know that either of those teams are necessarily as well equipped. Obviously, the Celtics offense is great, but it's very egalitarian. It's not necessarily. I mean, I think Joe Mazzulla would like it to be more ruthless and matchup hunty, but a lot of the times it isn't. And I do kind of wonder if the
Yeah, I feel
teams.
like Detroit has the front line to deal with that, but there's other issues like in terms of like Cade being like really the sole ball mover on the roster
Yeah,
that's been proven with
that's kind
them
of
that they can. Yeah,
well, that's kind of what I'm saying is like, Detroit is really good. And I think let's segue into Detroit after this because it's a natural entry point. But Detroit has been really good. But the question for Detroit basically all year has been, is their offense really good enough to win 3 rounds and get to the NBA finals? With knowing how much Cade has to do, knowing how playoff defenses operate when it comes to, we are going to take away your best thing and we're going to take away your second best thing and we're going to take away your third best thing. We're going to make you beat us with your fourth best thing. To me, is the Pistons' fourth best thing enough to carry them 3 rounds? Still an unanswered question, despite all of the metrics and all of the stats suggesting that this team is absolutely a bona fide contender and they have the best record in the NBA. I mean, they have to be in that discussion, especially with the defense being the way it is. But I just wonder on a matchup basis, like, is this team going to be able to punish the Cat Brunson pick and roll or some of the Celtics weaker perimeter matchups or Cleveland's weak perimeter with defense with Mitchell and Harden? Is this team going to be able to punish that in the same way that like a Pacers team from last year would?
Yeah, I would agree with you, Alex. I've kind of had similar thoughts, honestly. Watching them play the Celtics at the Garden, I feel like they haven't always passed the eye test. But I mean, hey, look at the record. Like you said, they've been dominating teams. They just beat the Raptors. They beat the Red Hot Hornets. They smashed the Knicks. So whatever I may or may not be seeing, their record still speaks for itself. They should smash the old 40-20 rule from Phil Jackson. But I do still have
They
some of
already
those
have.
concerns. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I still have some of those concerns heading into the playoffs because this is still a younger team. The shooting hasn't been great. I mean, Duncan Robinson's your best shooter, and keeping him on the floor presents problems on defense. And like Justin said, Cade is carrying a lot, so that's kind of a lot to ask for one guy. Duran's been great, don't get me wrong, but he's not really like a put the team on his back kind of guy, I don't think. So I still think there are definitely issues, but like you said, the record speaks for itself. And I think at the end of the day, the East is still pretty open. I mean, nobody's like, oh, they're gonna win it for sure. I don't think that that's happened this year, and that's usually not what the NBA is like, anyways. But in a year where the Celtics were expected to be worse, the Knicks are expected to be better. Maybe I still think it's pretty open.
Anything to add, JQ?
no, not really. I think we pretty much summed up the East pretty well. I'm not so sure we've come to any kind of conclusions about who really is a contender, but I do feel like with the moves that made at the deadline, we got a little more clarity that is really only going to be settled by the games being played, as is always the case.
It sure is, JQ. And where can you follow your work for the games to be played going forward?
Celtics Wire, of course, and wherever you found this. If I haven't ripped out what little hair I have on my head editing this episode, which has had lots, if you've made it this far, technical issues that hopefully you haven't noticed.
Daniel, where can we find your work?
Yeah, same thing. Celtics Wire right here. Also Clutch Points. Um, and just check me out tweeting Daniel D1214. I'll be at the game live Sunday against LA. Not live for tonight against the Warriors, but the time difference will at least be kind to me.
I'll be asleep. I got to get up at 5 a.m. in the morning. I'll watch it on a replay.
Sounds right. You can find my work by following me on Instagram or Blue Sky, or you can find my band's work by listening to Divine Sweater wherever you listen to music. We've made stuff somewhere. Anyway, that concludes yet another episode of Havlicek Stole the Pod. Before we get out of here, as always, we will do something to remember or forget. I'll let you guys take stage and I'll get the last one.
Didn't you go?
Sure. I'm going to forget some of the talk about Tatum's return that's been going around, especially on Boston sports radio. Won't exactly
You stole
name
my idea.
names. Oh, sorry, Justin. But
It's okay.
I've just seen a lot of stuff online, and I'm used to some of these. I don't know how to put it. Some of these recurring characters that come up talking about this, and oftentimes I think it's best to just ignore them, ignore that outside noise. I mean, we've all grown up around New England. We know what the sports landscape is like, especially on the radio, and it's not always kind. But sometimes you gotta push back a little. But other times I would generally just ignore the noise because it's not worth engaging in most of the time.
JQ?
I'm going to remember to schedule my day a little bit better than I have, with my wife shifting back to a morning teaching gig, because I am exhausted right now, and it's not that late. And if I were to stay up, I would be even more tired. So I'm going to remember to get more sleep and try to be a little bit healthier through the stretch run. It's a good time of year to focus on your health if you cover this league, because let me tell you, it's real good at making you sit down more than you should.
I'm going to forget that I ever had to watch Enes Kanter play basketball for my favorite team. And on that, we'll close out yet another episode of Havlicek Stole the Pod.